Shalom from Jerusalem. This is TV7's Israel at War update. And as we're set to deliberate the latest developments here in Israel, throughout the region and beyond, with chief focus on the northern front vis-a-vis Hezbollah in Lebanon, as well as prospects of an imminent strike against the Islamic Republic of Iran, it's always important to remember how this war began. 383 days ago, on October 7th of last year, the Islamist Hamas and its terror affiliates in the Gaza Strip launched an onslaught on southern Israel, declaring war by perpetrating a massacre, murdering some 1,200 mostly civilians, wounding over 4,800 others, and kidnapping 250 people, including elderly men, women, children, and infants. 101 of them remain in Hamas captivity to date. The subsequent day, on October 8th of last year, Iran essentially joined that war when it greenlighted its proxy in Lebanon, Hezbollah, to launch cross-border attacks from Lebanon into Israel. And since then, Hezbollah has done just that, with over 12,000 projectiles being launched towards Israeli territory. And not Hezbollah alone. Additional proxies have joined the fight from Yemen, from Syria, from Iraq, as well as Iran proper. Absolutely. It's a sad day, not only for the American intelligence community, but also that of all allies and partners around the world, namely the Five Eyes, Israeli intelligence community, and others who are working day and night to keep Western civilization safe. But let's now turn to Central Israel, where we're joined by Colonel in Reserve Miri, formerly a senior officer at the IDF Intelligence Directorate, senior advisor also at the Prime Minister's Office, and a senior fellow at the Institute for Counterterrorism at Reichman University in Herzliya. Colonel Eisen, I'd like to hear only just a sentence or two from you on that specifically, since I'd like to touch on what's going on in the region and that key aspect that now we're hearing Ayatollah Ali Khamenei coming out and claiming victory. Apparently, he identifies as a victor, but nonetheless, it seems like that identity is far from the truth.
So I'm going to start and talk just for a moment about that aspect of a leak, because the biggest challenge, since we have the type of what we call open source information where everything is out there, and what do you keep secret has become a much bigger challenge, because you can find everything online, including satellite images that may not be the US ones, but they're going to be the Russian or the Chinese or whoever sells them to you. And as such, it becomes that question of what information do we keep secret? And I very much relate to what Joel was saying before, because there's a lot about the trust, meaning you're supposed to keep things secret so that you can continue to have a relationship between decision makers and the intelligence community, between different intelligence communities around the world. That is part of where we live, and I pose it as a challenge. There's no easy answer for it. Having said all of that, I look around, and you quoted Khamenei. He's a big tweeter, for those who don't know. He's on X or whoever does it for him, and he puts out quite a bit of information in that way. And not only has Khamenei, the supreme religious leader, been active, but the president of Iran and the foreign minister of Iran are being active. The one is at the BRIC conference taking place in Central Asia. The other has been wandering around the different countries of the Middle East. So for a moment, as we zoom out, look at what Iran is trying to do. It's trying to do diplomacy. And when it does diplomacy, like with everything else, it needs to show that what it does is winning. So Khamenei calls Israel the cancer of the world, that if you just cut us out, everything is resolved. That's what Khamenei says pretty much every single week. But if you add into it that what he's saying right now is, look at us, Iran. We right now are participating in the world. There's been a lot of not dialogue, but words over the last few weeks. Certainly the last 2 weeks since the buildup to an Israeli attack that is against the Islamic regime of Iran, against the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, against those that are the ones that have been calling for our destruction. And the words that they're using are not just to their own people, because when he says they're winning, to me, that's for his own people. He said it in Persian to himself. But when he sends out the president, when he sends out the foreign minister, who are not the important figures, because they're not the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, but he's sending them in diplomatic missions to different places, that's showing Iran that doesn't want to be isolated. And I say that's good on us. If we've managed in our rhetoric, in our action, in our anticipation of whatever action we do, make the Islamic regime of Iran feel that they need to say that they're winning when they're not, where they need to go out and engage, I'm all for it. I want them to feel under stress. I want them to feel under attack, both diplomatic and otherwise. What I'm going to add into this is, sadly, right now, in that sense, we have a lot of challenges where the Russias and the Chinas are not on the side that I would like to see them. And Israel right now has to talk a lot more in that sense with our other partners here in the Middle East, because that Iranian reach out is not just to the Russia and to the China, it's to Egypt and to Saudi Arabia, it's to the countries in and around, and we need to make sure that they don't want to be in confrontation, but that all of these countries understand who is the one who will stand up to that Islamic regime's rhetoric, and they're only ones that are really willing to act.
Well, Colonel Eisen, the Russians are quite active when we're talking about the Islamic Republic of Iran. Israel maintains a deconfliction mechanism for the Syrian theater for obvious reasons. We don't want to get into a full-fledged confrontation with the Russians on our northern front, in addition to the other adversaries. But at the same time, we do see that the electronic warfare that they implemented in Latakia is implemented also now in Iran. There are now reports about the Russians preparing to provide the Iranians with early warning in the event of Israeli activity to go out and conduct whatever is planned for the Iranians. What should be done in this context?
There's never an easy answer. It's not either or. I think that what we're looking at, like I'd like to say as an Israeli right now, stop the relations with Russia. They're backing the Iranians. They're receiving from Iran the different type of UAVs and warfare. And that's like, take that point. And I'm like, that doesn't always work that way. The Russian influence inside Syria is still of importance. In its own way, it's both an impediment, but also an important part for Israel in the arena. The fact that Israel can attack and has killed in the last week top Hezbollah operatives at the heart of Damascus. I'm going to say allegedly, but who else attacks in the heart of Damascus in the El Mazeh neighborhood and kills them? The Hezbollah operative who is responsible for much of the weaponry that's going back and forth. And that is literally, like, for the Americans listening here, half a mile from Bashar's palace, meaning the Israeli capability to be able to do a pinpointed attack at the heart of Damascus while this is going on has to do also with what you called that deconfrontation with Russia, because Russia is the one who is supposedly able to protect Syria to a certain degree. Under the radar in this last week, as allegedly Israel killed this top Hezbollah operative inside Damascus, in addition, we have seen that Russia, using Russian airplanes, is bombing, I never know how to call them because they're not good guys, but they're bombing Syrian opposition forces that are in northern Syria, and that's kind of under the radar. So if we talk about Russia's position, under Putin, we have seen very clearly that Russia, certainly in this war, has taken, for me as an Israeli, the absolute other side. Having said that, do I, because of that, divorce it completely, not work with them at all, and call it out? I'm not sure that that's in my best interest. And as such, you try to meander in between these very difficult paths.
I just call them terrorists, but when we're talking about Hayat
I
Tahrir
won't.
al-Sham, Hayat Tahrir
I can't
al-Sham,
take that
its
stuff, Jonathan.
leader, I know, but Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, its leader, al-Julani, the former head, of course, of Jabhat al-Nusra, who is one of the closest confidants of the slain Adawahiri, Ayman Adawahiri of Al-Qaeda. I mean, for all intents and purposes, a terrorist.
No, that one I agree with. I thought you were talking about Russia for a moment. My mistake.
No. We have 2 minutes left for all of you, so keep it short. Each one has a closing statement. What would you like to focus on is up to you. Colonel Eisen?
I'm going to bring it back to Israel and Iran. I think that the next week there's like a rolling of the drums, and none of us know what will happen. What will Israel do? What will Iran's response be? And again, from what you brought up, I'm worried about Russia. I'm kind of worried about Turkey because I don't see this as something contained. And I think that this is something that's in front of us in the near future.
Thank you, Colonel Eisen.